Okay, let's get started. Welcome to today's webinar, everyone. My name is Megan. I'm Taboola's Content Marketing Manager, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's webinar. If you don't know us, we are the world's leading discovery platform that works with advertisers and publishers globally. We enable over 1.4 billion people to discover what's interesting and new at the moments they're most ready to explore. And now onto the good stuff. Joining us today is Rachel Zalta, our Global Research and Insights Lead, who's going to be presenting on creatives and the data that drives them. A couple of housekeeping notes: please submit any questions you may have throughout the session by using the questions box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We're going to be having a Q&A section at the end of the webinar, and we'll answer those at that time. We will also have a recording of the webinar that will be shared with all attendees later this week, as well as the slide deck for your reference. If you want to participate in social media during the webinar, we ask that you use #TaboolaTalks so we can participate with you. Okay, I'll send it over to Rachel.
Thank you, Megan. I just want to make sure the volume is working. You guys all hear me? Okay, cool. So hi, everyone, and welcome to the Creative and Data webinar. Today, we're going to talk about what kind of creatives drive the best ad performance based on an analysis of millions of ads on our platform. I'm excited for this webinar because this is probably one of my favorite topics. A lot of people would think that combining creative with data is like a weird concept because they're kind of opposites. But what we found is that they're not. They do go hand in hand. So love talking about this topic. I'll just introduce myself. So my name is Rachel Zalta. I head up our research and insights efforts in Taboola. I have an MA in social psychology with a focus on persuasion psychology and online behavior. So I will be talking about the psychology point of view in part of this presentation. I've been in Taboola for over 3.5 years already. What I do for Taboola is I study online behavior based on data gathered from billions of recommendations worldwide. So I look at a lot of data all of the time, and I try to understand how people are behaving and why they're behaving in that way. Feel free to follow me on either Twitter or on LinkedIn, and use the #TaboolaTalks. So I'm going to actually start with a question for you all. The question is, or Megan, do you want to share it? So the question is, how many brand messages do you think you see in one day? So I think we're going to have like 10 seconds for people to answer the question. The options are between 1 to 10 brand messages, between 10 to 100, between 100 and 1,000, 1,000 and 10,000, or over 10,000.
Okay, we're going to give you guys a couple more seconds. Okay, it looks like the majority of you, 36% of you, think that you see between 100 and 1,000 brand messages a day. 30% of you think it's between 10 and 100.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, when I was thinking about this question, that's what I guessed as well. I was like, yeah, I'd probably see like around 100 brand messages in one day. According to data that we found, what most people, the majority of people, are exposed to around 10,000 brand messages in one day. This is according to the American Marketing Association. And this is a crazy number, like 10,000 brand messages in one day. When I tried to think about it in regards to my life, I started calculating like how many moments or how many minutes am I awake in one day, which was around 1,000 minutes, depending how much I slept the night before. So if I'm awake for 1,000 minutes and I'm exposed to 10,000 brand messages in one day, what that means is that at every given moment, I am probably exposed to around 10 brand messages. And it makes me like look around and ask myself, like, which brand messages am I exposed to at this moment? Which I encourage you to do too. And so this is a crazy number, and it's crazy for consumers, but from the marketer perspective, it's pretty crazy as well. It means that marketers that are trying to get some kind of brand message across have a lot of competition. They're competing with 9 other brand messages that are being exposed to the same consumer at the same exact time. So the question is, how does a marketer succeed in a world with so many brand messages? And how do we grab the consumer's attention and get them to actually engage with the brand message? So I'm going to be talking a lot about this and really giving recommendations to marketers as to what kind of creatives are going to really let your campaign succeed based on the data that we've gathered. So another thing that I want you to keep in mind is that the context is really important. So if your brand message is going to be on a billboard, or if it's going to be online, if it's going to be in a video format, or if it's going to be if you're going to have an image and a title, those are all going to play a part also in the success of your campaign, but also in regards to what kind of creative you want to use. What kind of, the image that you're going to use on a billboard is going to be different than the image that you're going to use online. So I want you to keep the context in mind when we talk about these different things. And I'm going to ask you guys, this is question number 2. So if you as marketers or as consumers, what kind of image would you click on more? An image with a person or an image without a person? So from the marketer perspective, it's what kind of image would you use? And from the consumer perspective, what kind of image would you click on? So person, no person, or it depends.
We're going to give you guys a couple more seconds. Okay, 58% of you said with a person and 39% said it depends.
Okay, so yeah, images with a person do really, really, really well. That's what we found on looking at our data. If we try to relate this to psychology, there's a lot of different explanations. So one of the main explanations is actually regarding survival. We are social beings, and the reason why we are social beings is because humans and connections with other humans have helped us survive throughout the years. So I want you to imagine that I'm in this room, and I'm in this room not with Megan, but with a lion. So who would survive, me or the lion? The lion would survive, right? What happens when I meet another person, and then you meet other people, and we create a community, what happens is that we're able to build defenses against dangerous things like lions. So part of what helped humans survive throughout the years were their social ties with other humans. And this is one of the reasons why we're always looking for that human connection. When we walk into the office in the morning, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look and see who else is here. And that's an automatic instinct. That same automatic instinct happens when we're scrolling down a page online. So we're going to look for other humans. So that's one of the reasons why images of people actually do really, really well. And then the next question is animal versus no animals. So not every advertiser can use an image of an animal in their creative, but when you can, using images of animals is actually works really, really well because we're obsessed with everything cute. My whole Instagram feed is all like cute pictures of puppies and polar bears. I love that kind of thing, and apparently a lot of people love that kind of thing. So according to research, the same areas of our brain that are activated when we look at cute pictures are the areas that are activated when we fall in love or when we eat chocolate. So it's the pleasure areas of our brain. We really do enjoy looking at cute pictures. So taking that into consideration, if we wanted to grab attention and get people to look at us, use pictures that people want to look at. So like cute pictures is a great way to go. So this is another really interesting question, colorful versus black and white. Actually going to hand it over to you guys. So what do you think? Color pictures that are colorful or black and white pictures? So we have black and white, color, or it depends.
Just a couple more seconds, everyone. Okay, it looks like 64% of you say color and 24% say it depends.
Okay, so yeah, you guys are getting it really. You guys are doing well here. So it's interesting though that nobody chose black and white, right? No one chose black and white. So most of you think that color does better. A lot of you think that it depends, but no one thought that black and white would do well. So this is really interesting. And before I answer the question, I'm going to give you a little bit of a background. So there are a lot of theories that connect different colors to different emotions. For example, that green is happy, yellow is afraid, and blue is sad. Now, if this was true, then that would mean trouble for Facebook and for Taboola because blue is sad. But it's not true. So according to research, colors are not inherently linked to emotions. There are also different theories that talk about colors linked to attention. So there are theories that say that like red grabs a lot of attention. But according to studies, colors are not inherently linked to attention either. So what kind of colors do we want to use in order to grab that attention? And when we're trying to compete for that attention online or in general. And here, what studies show is that when you use a color that is different than its surroundings, that's when it's going to get the most attention. So the answer is it depends. It depends on what everybody else is doing. So imagine that you're scrolling down a web page and everybody is using black and white pictures, or everything is black and white. And suddenly you use a red picture, then people are going to automatically look at your red picture. What happens in the opposite situation when everybody else uses color and suddenly you use a black and white image is that you're different and you're going to be sticking out from the web page. People are going to be looking directly at you. So what we found in Taboola when we analyzed the data is that black and white images were actually doing really, really well for quite a while. For around like a year and a half. Advertisers using black and white images were basically choosing the color that nobody else was using, and therefore people were looking directly at them or at their image. Recently, we're seeing a little bit of a change because we found that so many advertisers are using black and white that now they're not as different in the web page, the black and white images. So that's in regards to color. And then I think this is the last question here. So video versus image. So you probably all know that videos are a great way to grab attention, and videos do really, really well. So the reason is related to survival too. So if I was trying to survive and I was walking in the jungle and there was something moving in the side of my eye, how important would it be for me to detect that movement? It would be really important, right? That thing that's moving, it could be food, right? If I was trying to survive, then I need to eat something. And that thing that's moving could be dangerous. So I need to detect that movement right away to be able to defend myself. So humans have developed an instinct to look towards things that are moving right away, really, really quickly. And that same instinct happens when we're online. So we'll scroll down a web page, and if we see something moving, our eyes go there automatically. And studies have found that videos are actually almost impossible to ignore. Even if you're trying to ignore them, you're trying not to look at them, they're going to grab that attention. And if we go back to that first question that I asked you guys, how many brand messages are we exposed to in one day? These recommendations are really important, right? And specifically video if we're thinking about a space where we're being exposed to 10 different brand messages, it's very, very high competition. We want to use a medium, or we want to use a creative that's going to be able to win that attention from the consumer. So these recommendations are pretty important. And this leads me to talking a little bit about best practices. So what I spoke about up until now is best practices, basically. You could also go on our site and actually download our best practices. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a lot of different kinds of best practices from different companies. And best practices are really great. Best practices are great, especially for marketers that are starting out, right? They don't know, like, what kind of images am I supposed to use. This is a great place to go to know what's working in general. The problem is that best practices sometimes are just not enough. They're not enough when you're trying to open your campaign to new countries, or when you've been focusing on one specific product and now you're moving on to another product. And you want to know, shouldn't your best practices change now that you're moving to a new product or now that you're moving to a new country? If you're putting together creatives, another thing that you want to know is, what is the impact of these best practices? So let's say people work really well for your image, but now you have to do a whole new photo shoot to add a person to your image. Is it really worth it? Is the impact of adding a person to your image really strong, right? So you want to know, how important are each one of these best practices? You want to know if these best practices are going to change depending on where your campaign is going to appear. And that's when the best practices are actually just not enough. And what this did is it led us to create an internal tool that allows us to understand the impact that each best practice has on the success of your campaign. So for example, adding a person versus no person, what is the impact on the CTR there? This internal tool allowed us to filter by country. So to understand if the best practices actually change depending on where your campaign is going to appear. The tool also allowed us to understand the best practices by verticals. So if you're looking at an entertainment vertical versus a finance vertical, should the recommendations be, are the recommendations different? And then of course, mobile versus desktop, right? So it's a different user behavior completely if you're on mobile or desktop. Are the recommendations the same exact thing? Should they be different? And then by language as well, should we be using different images or different words depending on which language we're using? And then I think this is probably the most crucial part, is that this internal tool actually analyze the data every single week so that we can stay up to date, not with what was working a few months ago when we analyzed the data for the best practices, but what's working today, right? We all know that trends online are changing drastically all the time. And so we try to create a tool that lets us access those changes on a constant basis. And then we decided that this internal tool is important enough for it's so important and it's so helpful that we decided to give marketers and actually the whole world access to it. So you can find this, you could find these trends on a website called trends.taboola.com. Just going to explain a few things about it that I get a lot of questions about this tool. So the data is analyzed on a weekly basis. Every single week we take all of the items that ran on Taboola's network and we analyze them. So it's very accurate. The items that are included have at least 25 clicks and 25,000 impressions. So we won't include an item that has like 10 impressions or 5 clicks. Altogether, every week we analyze a total of 75 million clicks and 50 billion impressions. So this is like real big data. The way we analyze it is we take the CTR, the average CTR of all of the creatives with the characteristics. So in the example of people versus no people, it's the average CTR of all creatives that included an image of a person versus the average CTR of all the images that did not include a person. So, for example, if the uplift is 100%, then the highlighted characteristic with a person got double the CTR because it was 100% more. And then the images that are displayed on the site are actually just examples. So that's not like based on real campaigns. So in addition to image trends, we also have keyword trends. So here you'll be able to see which words did well in regards to the CTR. So words like beautiful, looks, his, she, photos. And you'll also be able to see words that did not do so well in regards to the CTR impact. So it looks like game and insurance and free are actually not doing so well. These are words that we usually suggest combining with a higher CPC, a higher bid. And then we have phrase trends. So this is a combination of 3 words that start the title. So these are phrases that did well. This picture of, anything to do with Meghan Markle, the real reason. And we also have some phrases that did not do so well. So this is a new tool called Video Trends. So we didn't really speak about video so much, but here we have different action types. So what are people doing in the video? And is it helping or is it not helping? The viewability rate. Here we can actually choose to look at viewability rates or completion rates. So what kind of videos are grabbing that attention, which is the viewability rate, and what kind of videos are maintaining that attention with a completion? What is engaging the audience? And then we have topic trends. So this is actually not related to the creative, the title or the image or the video. This is related to what the topic is. So what are people, what kind of topics are people interested in right now? This is updated every moment. So when I took this screenshot, it was in the time of the new year. People were reading a lot about the new year and about Trump. And then this is my favorite part of the presentation. This is the cool findings that we found by digging into the data. And I think this is really interesting because if we just would have stuck with those best practices that we analyzed once and we never really looked back at the data, we would have never known about these cool findings. So these cool findings are only accessible to us because we built a tool that that looks into the data on a regular basis. So one really interesting one is that the word surprising was trending for months. It was doing really, really well. All advertisers were using it. And then one day last year, it just stopped. So it was on the high CTR list for a very long time, and then it became in the low CTR list. And that's interesting. There are a bunch of different reasons for that. Probably this has to do with creative fatigue. So consumers really like the word surprising because it made them interested in what's that surprising information. And then everybody was using surprising, so people got tired of that word. Consumers of native ads prefer images without text. So here we were talking about the context before, where you have your brand message is really important. So people that are usually coming from native, they don't want to see an image with text. It feels a little bit like a banner to them. But in a B2B or in business-related products, we actually found a CTR uplift for images with text. So again, here, when you dig into the data, you see some differences that you might not have expected. In general, images with people do better. Of course, we spoke about that before. But whoever said it depends for images with people was actually right. Specifically for finance products, we found that images without people have a higher CTR. Again, we wouldn't have known this if we wouldn't have looked at the data and looked at it by category. In the United States, consumers want to see content with photos. So I was reading out before from the high CTR keywords, and we found that the word photo is there, and it actually increases CTR substantially. So looking at keywords a lot of times would tell you what kind of content people want to see. And then we spoke about black and white and color. None of you guys said black and white. And what we found is that black and white is actually doing the best in most countries. But in Mexico and Brazil, colorful images are actually doing better. So here the right answer is that it does depend. And for sports marketers, we found something else interesting. So usually we'll see that close-up images do the best, but specifically for sports, images taken at a distance are actually doing better. Because we think like people maybe want to see the game, they want a better view of the game, so they want to see the picture in more of like a distance, like taken from afar. So here's some cool, those are some cool findings. This is another one that I really like. So this we actually found was pretty consistent for a while. We looked into food-related content. So what kind of images are people using related to food? And we found that images without food did better than images of food in the food category, which is kind of surprising. In the beginning, people were showing me this and they were like, is this a mistake? And I was digging into the data and I'm like, no, it's not a mistake. And it was weird. But when I actually looked into the campaigns that this was based on, what we found is that the advertisers were using like a mystery strategy here. So that in the headline, they described the food that they were talking about, and they didn't actually give the picture of the food. And people, especially in regards to food, they want to see the picture, right? So what happened was they ended up clicking on the creative to find out what is that food that was described to them. So not having the picture of the food increased that sense of mystery. So we have one more question for you all. So before I show you, pictures of men or pictures of women? This is one of my favorite topics. So what do you guys think? What do you prefer clicking on as a marketer? What do you usually use? Men, women, or it depends? Don't look on Taboola Trends, guys. That's cheating.
Okay, a couple more seconds. Okay. 8% of you said men, 52% said women, and 40% said it depends.
Okay, go it depends. So the answer is that it depends, of course. So this is a cool insight that you actually can't see on the site because we don't have access to going back in the data yet. But if you looked at Taboola Trends in May, you would find that images of women got a 25% higher CTR. In July, we found that images of women got 15% higher CTR. In October, it kind of became more equal. So images of men and images of women both got kind of the same CTR. In December, images of men are actually doing better. And in January, we saw an 11% CTR. So when we're looking at images of men or women, a lot of times we'll come with like, a general rule of thumb that images of women are always doing better. But when we actually look into the data, when we look at it over time, we could see trends that are changing. I don't know the reason for these trends, but this is real life online behavior. So this is one of the really cool findings that we found from trends. Okay, so now what I want to do is I want to do a quick demonstration of how it looks like when a marketer actually uses trends. So I'm just going to go on the site right now. Sorry for that. So I'm just going to go on trends.taboola.com. And I want to pretend that I am a finance marketer. And so I'm going to filter by finance. And let's say I'm in the United Kingdom. Now, as a finance marketer, what would I do? So I would go down these image trends and I would see what kind of images have been working in the United Kingdom in the finance category. So it looks like pictures of animals in finance are not doing so well, which kind of makes sense. Images with no people are doing better than images of people. Again, that's interesting because it's not usually what we find, but that is what we found for finance. Images taken outdoor are doing better than indoor. That's another surprising finding. I would imagine that images that are related to finance are like in banks or indoor, but it looks like that's not what we're seeing in the data. And when I look at these different these different insights, the way it translates to me as a marketer is that I want to test a few images outdoor, and I would probably choose one indoor too, just to make that comparison. And I would probably choose a bunch of images with no people, and I would choose one or two with people just to make sure that this trend is true also to my specific audience. So photos are doing better than illustrations. Pictures taken from a distance are doing better than close-up, and images with text are doing better than no text. So here, what I would do with this data, and I think this is a really important point, I wouldn't take this data and say, I'm only going to use an image with text, taken from a distance, that's a photo, taken outdoor with no people and no animals. What I would do when I look at this data is I would build a campaign with a bunch of different creatives that are testing different things based on the findings from trends. So I would not suggest using one creative. I would suggest using a lot of creatives. We actually ran an analysis to see what is the magic number. How many creatives do we need to put in a campaign to yield the highest CTR? And we found that the magic number is 9. So I usually suggest testing 9 different creative variations based on the findings from trends. So that's what I would do from the image perspective. I'm not running a video, so I won't look here. But if I would look at the keywords and I would try to think which headline should I use. So here again, I would filter by finance. And I could do also UK. And I could just look at general finance if I want to as well. I don't have to get as specific. But it's a good way of getting new ideas, is like filtering for more specific insights. So the word "and," large, sweeps, house, millions are doing well. This here is called a DKI, a dynamic keyword insertion, meaning if you put this in your title, the consumer would actually just see the name of their city in the title. So if right now I'm in Manhattan, the title would change to say the word Manhattan instead of city capitalized. And it looks like within finance, DKIs are working really well. So that would be another thing that I would test. And we actually have a new tool that actually went live yesterday. So I'm going to do a quick demo of that. I'm going back to the homepage and I'm going to scroll down the different cards. We call this tool the Title Analyzer. And what this does is it connects to Taboola's algorithm to tell you, to predict which title is going to do better for you. So I'm just going to make up a quick headline. This insurance company is the best in the UK. Okay. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to figure out which words should I use in my title, and I'm going to change from best. I'll try something else. This insurance company is best in the UK, or this insurance company is the most successful in the UK. And now I'm going to predict the title success. And what I see here is that when I use the word best versus most successful, Best actually has a much higher predicted CTR. And then if I want to, I could just go ahead and copy this and change it to something else. Like maybe I don't want to look at UK, maybe I want to look at the US. And it looks like US even has a higher predicted CTR. So as a marketer, I would use this tool to try to understand which titles and which variations are going to give us the highest predicted CTR. And those are the headlines that I would use in my campaign. So I don't actually have to test all these variations live. Instead, I use this title analyzer to find the highest predicted CTR titles, and then I'll just use only those in my campaign. So this is a really cool tool that I would use a lot as a marketer. So that is how I would use trends as a marketer. Move on to, so that's really what I have for you guys today. So a few takeaways. Guys, we have to know the best practices. I'm not saying, forget best practices. It's important to study them, to know them, to look at different best practices that different companies recommend. But sometimes you need to put them aside. Best practices are not always correct. We need to look at the actual data, and we need to look at best practices that are updated. We need to look at differences by country, category, platform, language. And when we do look at the data or the best practices, those shouldn't dictate exactly which creatives to use, but instead those should inspire different creative tests. So we should always be testing a lot of different things and use data to inspire what those tests should be. And another thing that you want to remember is that trends online are always changing. So we need to always keep tabs on what's actually working right now. And this is one of the reasons why actually on trends we added a subscription button, because like what happens to me at least, and to a lot of marketers, this is what I'm hearing, is that we'll look at the best practices, and we'll even look at trends, which is like best practices for now, but we'll forget to always like go back and always look at what changed. And so by subscribing, you could actually just the trends come to you, so you remember to like always look. So that's what I find that really, really helpful. So now we're up to the questions time. So feel free to send over your questions. I'm happy to answer anything.
As a reminder, guys, you can submit questions through the questions module in your GoToWebinar screen. But a couple actually came through while you were speaking. Mm-hmm. So the first one, does the tool work in different languages?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a good question. We wanted the tool to be accessible in all different countries and all different languages. So it is. You can filter. I think we have like a lot of languages live on Taboola Trends right now. It could be that you'll filter by your language, or you won't find your language within the list. And in that case, what it means is that we just don't have enough data to make any significant recommendations yet. So if there are only 100 or a few hundred campaigns live, we don't want to make a suggestion that's not significant. So we usually won't include that kind of data. But like if we go now on trends, we can actually look to see how many languages are live. So let's just go on all countries. So English is the default, but we have Arabic, Dutch, French, German, Greek, Hebrew, Italian, Japanese, Korean, Polish, Portuguese. We have a lot of languages here, and you can actually filter to see which keywords are doing well in each one of these languages.
Awesome. So you spoke a lot about sponsored content and image and keyword trends. Are there any video strategies to share?
Yeah, so we've been in the video space for a few years now, and we've been doing a lot of research in regards to videos. So first of all, you can take a look at trends and look at which action types and which video characteristics are doing best right now. Another thing that you can do, or another place where you'll find some great suggestions, is actually on our blog. So we've been creating we've been putting together some really great blog posts about different video trends and strategies that are working. I wrote a bunch of them, so feel free to look there. But there are a lot of different strategies for video. So for example, one that we recently put together was about slow motion. So when you have a slow-mo video, what is that? How does that impact the consumer? Is that good or is that not good? And how does it affect them from the psychological perspective? So you can just take a look there and see some great strategies for video. But we might just do another webinar on video. I feel like that's a good idea. Yeah.
Okay, so last one for the day. How accurate is the Taboola Trends data?
Yeah, so the Taboola Trends data, what's really, I think, what's amazing about it is that it's based on millions of clicks and billions of impressions. What this means is that it's really accurate. If you want to know what's actually trending online, Taboola Trends is the place to go, because it's just like extremely accurate because it's based on so much data. So yeah, that's my answer there.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today, and thank you, Rachel, for presenting. We'll send over the webinar recording sometime this week, and it was great to have you. Thank you.